Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be working on the Corvette yet again. This video isn't going to be much of a surprise because I already did a unboxing video of this particular product probably 3 or 4 months ago. It's been a while. Yeah, I filmed that, and then this has been pushed back just because of install. We've done a lot of other stuff before we've gotten to this point. So, up until this point, we've done the clutch install, we've done the blower lid upgrade, and a few other bits. And up to this point, it's been, you know, the stock, pretty much stock, just a couple bolt-ons and a aftermarket clutch replacement. Well, today, we're going to be upgrading the cooling system, starting the cooling system upgrades for the Corvette. And what does that include? That includes the actual cooling system for the car, the engine, the motor, whatever you want to call it, but not the supercharger. Today's upgrade is actually going to be removing this old radiator. And as you guys can see, we already got started a little bit. We took the intake out, we took the upper radiator shroud out, and that is simply held in with 4 10mm bolts, 2 on each side. So remove that, pretty simple to come off. The rest of the radiator will be just removing all the hoses, disconnecting the clamps, and all of that fun stuff. We got the Mishimoto replacement radiator, that's got to go in. So first we're going to get this radiator out. I already drained it. I drained it yesterday. I drained all the motor oil, and the car does not have any transmission fluid in it because we've already replaced the clutch. That all got drained out when we drained the transmission lines and disconnected all of that to get that whole transmission transaxle assembly out. So all the liquids should be drained out of that radiator in theory, but there still might be residual pockets of motor oil and transmission fluids in it because this car is Z51. The Z06 and ZR1 will have a similar, if not same setup, but the car cooling systems go through the radiator to get cooled down. So let's get this radiator out. Look what isn't in here. There's nothing. Come look over here. You guys will see the factory radiator, the factory fan, and cooling package. And like I was saying earlier, the Z51 Corvettes have the trans and oil cooler. So you'll see some red right here. That's going to be the trans cooler for the passenger side. This is going to be the oil cooler on the driver's side. And I basically think how this goes, I don't actually think the oil goes into the radiator. I think it just has coils that go into the plastic end tank, keeps the oil in here, and comes back out. I think same thing over here. Comes in passenger side top, feeds through it, and comes out the bottom. Actually, that's the top, that's the bottom, but same thing. Fluid comes in, the coils inside will cool it, fluid comes out the bottom. Then the factory OEM fan, nothing special about it, it's just the factory fan. And this was a total pain to get out. You guys have to do a lot of almost destruction of your car, not destruction, deconstruction of your car, and basically disconnect lots of wires. There's 3 or 4 wire harnesses that connects to the radiator fan shroud itself. You have to unplug that. Then there's like stuff plugged into it. There's hoses plugged into it. You gotta undo all that. And then the various coolant hoses that are strewn around the car. Plus, to complicate this even more, I have the supercharger on here. So that cooling package is like probably 6 inches thick. And pulling it from the top, it was going to come hit the throttle body. Like you had to make the room to get that out. So I took the 4 bolts off the throttle body, took that out. And the car's kind of dirty now because there's grass and stuff everywhere, but that's pretty much it. Oh, highly recommend you guys get a drip tray. All kinds of fluid down here. Oil, coolant, and trans fluid. So that's going to be not fun to clean up. And I'm actually just going to leave that there because there's still, the coolers are just kind of chilling. Probably still dripping. But I just started this like one corner at a time. It kind of started up top. disconnected the radiator hose, disconnected the upper cooler. I didn't pull out the trans line. Same thing on the passenger side. I removed the upper vent port, removed the upper cooler. Then I went down under the car, cooler, lower radiator hose. Then you go to the driver's side, oil cooler on the bottom. Just take out, oh, I forgot, there's 2 bolts for the radiator shroud. 1, 2. They're both 10mm bolts. And to get these, you had to come from the bottom up. And finally, you can pull everything out. So that's just the cooler side. And then, like I was saying, disconnect the hoses up top of the radiator shroud. And then there's a couple plugs that hold the wire harness. Take that one off, take that one off. Disconnect that. I think that should pretty much be it. The last thing you really need to do is take out the coolant expansion tank. I have mine sitting in my oil drip tray. Take that out because the hose routing for that is literally right in the way. And with this swap, we're replacing all of the radiator hoses, so this all has to come out anyway. Alright guys, it's finally time for the install on the radiator. As you guys can see, we have the stock radiator here on the left with the plastic end tanks. We've got the oil cooler on the driver's side, trans cooler on the passenger side. Same thing over here in the Mishimoto. Oil cooler on the driver's, tranny cooler on the passenger side, and it has all the fittings for mounting the radiator fans here, up here, and like I showed in an earlier video, it's also got kind of a cutout for a charge pipe or intake pipe up top. Now, the one thing I did want to show you the difference. That might be like about 1 inch thick. Look at this here, guys. This radiator is probably almost 2 inches thick. So, the radiator's thicker, and it gets rid of the plastic end tanks. So, I also weighed it. You can tell that that thicker radiator is a little bit heavier, but the cost of that extra weight is going to be better cooling, hopefully. Not that I've had an issue with the factory radiator, but it is up there in age, and almost every guy that has a supercharged car, specifically Corvette, a lot of guys upgrade radiators and all that stuff. Now, most people go down the road of like, oh, there's a couple manufacturers out there. I'm having a brain fart right now. But there's like 1 or 2 Corvette manufacturers that make radiators, and they stick with those. I decided to go with Mishimoto just because, like I said in the last video, which by the way, I'll have a link in the description above. I decided to go with Mishimoto. I've heard good things. I saw the radiators at SEMA, and I haven't seen any real major complaints, any quality issues like that. So one thing to note here on the radiator, the only instructions that it says, there's a bung right here that's TIG welded. It says if your radiator has a port right here, put the threaded fitting in with a hose end. If you don't, as you guys can see, I don't have that. You put the threaded cap in, and that's what you do. So that was really the only set of instructions for this radiator, is put that cap in place. So nothing too crazy there. Now we're going to get to the cooling fans and show you what we're going to be doing there. Cooling fans, we decided to upgrade these as well. Here's the factory plastic unit, big open unit, and doesn't fully cover the radiator. There are open pieces here in the corners, and it's shorter. Yeah, it looks a little bit shorter too. Yeah, it's a little bit shorter too. And here is the D3 Engineering, or as they're now called, Prospeed twin fan setup. And as you guys can see, this is a fully encased aluminum shroud. It's got vent ports here so that when you're going through traffic, these vents will open up and allow airflow through. And it's a twin fan setup. I believe these are Spall fans. I'll have to look for a brand. Yeah, they're both Spall fans. Spall fans are really popular in the aftermarket car community, especially with, you know, retrofitting fans and pushers and all that stuff. So these twin Spall fans, this setup is from Prospeed. At this time, Mishimoto does not make an aluminum fan shroud with their own fan brands. I think they have their own branded fans, or they go with like a typical, you know, Spall or something like that. But Mishimoto does make fan shrouds and kits for other cars. They unfortunately don't make anything for the Corvette, which is kind of weird. It's like, why would you offer a new radiator for these cars and not support it? They make the hoses, but they don't make the fan shroud setup, which is a little weird. So we got a deal on the Mishimoto because they're one of the channel sponsors now. But the Prospeed Spall setup, no deals there. I had to pay full price for that, and all I'm going to say is the fan setup was more than the radiator. So a lot of supercharged guys will upgrade to this fan setup with like the Pro Charger, the A&A setup, and the other various brands. And Prospeed actually makes a shortened version. I unfortunately can't remember the name of the radiator company. Honestly, they're overpriced for what they are. They're just an aluminum racing radiator. And it's not CNR. It's like, I just don't remember the name of it. But anyway, Prospeed, or D3 Engineering, makes a kit for their shortened radiators. They sell a cut down radiator kit for like Pro Charger cars, because those superchargers sit right where the alternator is. I'm sorry, on the passenger side head, and they need room to get big charge pipes down. So people cut down the radiator. They buy those cut down radiators and they sell a fan setup for that. I just bought the full size one because obviously with a positive displacement blower, we don't have that hose. We don't have the 4 or 5 inch intake that we're trying to make going over the radiator issue, like those centrifugal blower guys, that issue that those guys have. So since we were upgrading the radiator, I was like, well, hell, might as well buy the fan setup. And always, you know, I can always, if I'm not happy with the setup, I can always sell it. Like, you know, so far everything looks pretty good. Like, everything is labeled, everything is laid out properly. And the only thing with the Prospeed setup is you do need to run power to the positive side of the fuse box. That's no big deal. We're already running accessories off that. Then I think there's a ground that you have to find. Alright guys, this shouldn't be rocket science. It should be fairly simple. Just gotta make sure you line up the fans, make sure they're facing forward, up or down. Now the corner closest to the camera, this is the top driver's side. So we're going to grab our fan setup and slide it in. About the only thing you don't want to do is have your fan setup hit the core. Alright guys, you just saw the good and bad of this kit. The good side is the passenger side. You'll see that it bolted right in. The bad side, the flange is literally like 1/2 millimeter too short. So what I ended up doing was I ended up cutting this little chunk of, I'm not sure if that's stainless or aluminum, of the Prospeed shroud out. I ended up putting a lock nut washer, and then I put the hardware in, and this isn't going to go anywhere. It's secure. Same thing on this side. This side I didn't have to cut anything. It just went together just fine. I'm not exactly sure which manufacturer was a little short. The Prospeed fan shroud could go another, I don't know guys, ½ inch. If it was another ½ inch, it'd be perfect. As you guys can see on this side, there's plenty of room here, but not enough room here. And this is all the way against the weld, the channel weld for the coolant core, so not 100% sure. But that's hot rodding for you. You know, you always got to modify things to make them fit just perfect. Bolt-on deals, yeah, a little bit of modification needed for it to work, but that's to be expected. And I solved that by just using a Dremel, cutting out that little piece, putting a lock washer, and tightening everything down. Alright guys, this has been a long, painful, and dirty project. Let's show you what we've done so far. So, as you guys can see, the radiator is in, the AC condenser is in, and the intercooler for the supercharger is all in place. As you guys saw in the video, I kind of struggled to get this in, but once I finally got the fans around everything, I was finally able to get the radiator pushed down into place and into the notches in the bottom. And then I ended up hooking up all of the transmission coolers and all those lines. You should be able to see one right here. Well, there's the cooler. The transmission upper cooler line is actually right here. I'm not sure what you can see. It's below the steam port vent on the top. That's hooked up, the bottom's hooked up, both oil cooler lines are hooked up on the side. I will say this, I almost recommend that you use your old E-clips, the new clips from Mishimoto. I don't know if they're cheaper, like more stronger. They're just a real pain in the butt to get around the pipe and like in, like they don't want to like spread. They just kind of want to stay stiff. I haven't pulled them apart a little bit and then put them in, but I would almost recommend using your old hardware just because it's not, they're easier to use, to be honest. Like I struggled for at least an hour with all these stupid clips. So all 4 coolers are in, all 4 E-clips are in. The radiator hose, I think you can see the lower radiator hose. It's plugged into the water pump. I think you guys can see the upper radiator hose. See where it says Mishimoto right there. And then it's going over to the driver's side. And I simply haven't plugged that in, but that's ready to get plugged back into. The steam port, that line's right there is ready to be plugged in. So the Mishimoto cooling system hoses, which are right here, these are ready to go in as well. I'm not going to get to those tonight. The last thing I wanted to show you guys was the D3 Engineering / Prospeed wiring for the Spall fans and that shroud that I picked up. That you will see is right here. These red relays, these are 60 amp fuses or relays. I think they're fuses. They're big. Yeah, they're big 60 amp fuses. Well, that's supposed to say 60, but you guys, it's upside down. So 2 60 amp fuses, and you can see this black line coming in. That black line coming into this common ground. I think you guys can see that. That is the ground for the fans, and then the fans need power. And these wires are all coming down from the factory harness. And these wires are coming up. And as you guys can see, I have it ran to the fuse box. And it's going to go to that positive post on the fuse box. And as you guys can see right here, I've got 3 wires actually coming off the positive terminal on the hot terminal on the fuse box. 2 of them are for these fan controls. The third one is actually for the intercooler pump. That's down. That's from the Edelbrock. That's down in the bottom part of the bumper. So that's gonna be your wiring. Those 2 power wires. That 1 ground wire that's down here, and you can close all this up and be good to go. Now guys, this is not the final install. I do have wire loom that I'm going to use. I'm going to wrap these red wires in wire loom and just make them disappear. Now these relays, I don't know, I think I've seen people actually screw them into the plastic fender right here. I haven't figured that out quite yet. I just don't know where these are going to end up, but they'll end up somewhere over here. And that's going to be it for the wiring. So that's going to be it for the Mishimoto Radiator, as well as the Prospeed fan setup install. So I hope you guys liked the video. Try to give you as much information as I can about the Prospeed fans, the Mishimoto Radiator, the Mishimoto coolant hoses, and you know, give you as much detail as we can get. Hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. If you want to know when I upload new content, hit the bell notification button down below. If you want to help support the channel, click the links down below. Thanks guys, have a great one.